Hey, what's up everybody? It's Kellen here from Start Your Systems and welcome back to MX Bikes, where today we're going to be reviewing the 2022 Anaheim 1 Supercross opener that happened in real life over the weekend. I know I was trying to get this video up on Monday. Honestly, part of the reason why I'm sucking at getting this video out when I want to is because I suck at MX Bikes and I wanted to play the Anaheim 1 track in MX Bikes to review the race from the past weekend. I've already done a lot of previews and showing off the A1 track in Monster Energy Supercross 4. Obviously, we had the super long live stream of the Anaheim opener in MX Sim. So I'm trying to touch all the bases of the different Anaheim 1s available to play in all the different video games. So I wanted to get MX Bikes in there as well, but like I said, I've been sucking at playing this track. I played it quite a bit last night with some of my teammates online and stuff like that and felt like I got a little bit better at it. I'm still struggling, so I apologize in advance that there's a pretty strong likelihood that most of this video will be me crashing in the whoops, but I got the rest of the track like pretty well figured out for the most part. As I say that, flipping into the stands pretty much. Come on, why am I stuck in the stands too? I can hit pretty much every other rhythm section fine. The rhythm section I just went to, I can't really triple in out of the corner. I suck at that part of it, but doing consistent lines and all that business. So we'll try to make it happen, Captain. We'll get there. But like I said, this is to review, kind of talk about, offer some thoughts and opinions on the opening round of the Monster Energy AMA Supercross Championship from over the weekend in Anaheim. And we're over the bars and the whoops again. Yeah, first of all, great to be back at Anaheim, in my opinion. I know some people don't really like California and all the rules that they have and stuff like that, but being there in person, it was the first Supercross race that I've attended since 2020. I didn't go to any in 2021. None were really close to me, but also there wasn't really a point for us in the media because I work for RacerX. There wasn't a point for us to go last year because we couldn't talk to any of the athletes. They're still being a little bit hard on us about that, but it was pretty much a lot more open than I was expecting. The pits were wide open this weekend. I never once saw people wearing masks or anything like that. So, for as restrictive as people always say California is and everything like that, the actual event itself felt like it was kind of almost back to business as usual. They didn't have autograph signings in the pits, but that's one of those things that you just kind of expect will probably come back last of everything anyway. So I digress. It was just kind of cool to be back at the races, cool to see everything, be around the atmosphere and stuff like that again. And yeah, actually catch a race in person and all that business. So a lot of fun. Ran into a couple people as well, so it was great. If any of you guys that I ran into are watching, great to catch up with you guys and say hello. Always feel free if you see me walking around at these races to say hello. I'm going to be at a lot of the races this year. I'll be at Oakland this weekend, so be sure to stop by. But let's talk about this race. 450 class, let's jump right into it. And I think I just want to jump into talking about the two biggest talking points because I'm sure that's why a lot of people wanted to hear my thoughts anyway. But of course, they're the two takeouts, aggressive passes, whatever you want to call it. The first one between Marvin Musquin and Malcolm Stewart, and the second one in the same corner. It's this corner coming up right here between Justin Barcia and Jason Anderson. While they're battling for second, Stewart and Marvin were battling for fifth or sixth or so at the time, and both are moving forward. So there's obviously some frustration involved post-race, specifically Malcolm Stewart definitely getting up in Musquin's face about it after the race. But let's just talk about both passes kind of objectively first. So first, it was, like I said, Malcolm and Marvin battling for sixth. They come into that corner, Marvin up the inside, and live, I'll admit, I was like, Jesus, Marvin just teeing up Malcolm. That was really, like, a little bit over the top, don't you think? But then when I watched it back on the broadcast and I watched all the replays of it, I was able to kind of draw a pretty easy conclusion as to how it ended up being as bad as it was. And really what it was that Marvin went down the inside and he thought Malcolm was going to be at the top of the berm, take the top line of the berm. And I don't know how he got to that conclusion. I don't know whether he saw Malcolm take that line the lap before, or maybe he just thought that was the racing line because he had been taking it, so he was just going to meet Malcolm at that specific rut. The difference is that Malcolm was cutting down in the corner so that he could, kind of almost take the low line. I'll try to show you what I mean. So if you come into this corner, Malcolm went like this pretty much out of the corner, right? Because that's just the way that 450s chew up the corner, is they, dig up so many ruts throughout the main event, throughout the night show, that eventually the good far outside line that you use to rail the berm and get a good drive to triple into that section eventually that line will, suck. And so they have to start taking different lines, and it just gets lower and lower in the berm. And Cooper Webb is very good at adapting to that, but, not everybody's kind of used to that form of racing in some regard. So I think Marvin just thought Malcolm was going to be at the top of the berm. I'll meet him up there. I'll put a, aggressive block pass on him, but I don't think there was zero intent to actually put him down right there. And then, they get together, they both go down, they get up, Malcolm kind of waves his arms and was like, WTF a little bit. They continue on, and to be fair, I don't necessarily think that they would have battled Barcia or Anderson for the podium, or eventually Webb either. I think that, they were in that mix, but I do think that Webb was probably in a position where he was going to get Barcia, and Barcia wasn't going to let either of those guys by. So in the end, Marvin finished about where I expected he would finish. I think he was going to pass Mookie because he was passing Mookie at that point, and he had actually pulled away, then got repassed by Mookie because he made a mistake in the whoops. But then the rest of the race, lap time wise, it was, pretty much they were evenly matched. So I think Marvin would have gotten away, personally speaking. I think Marvin ends up 4th there, and Malcolm probably ends up either 5th or perhaps 6th, depending on what happens with Sexton the rest of the race. But Sexton got back up to Marvin. Marvin held him off. Maybe Sexton gets to Malcolm, passes him. Maybe Sexton doesn't pass Malcolm. But I don't think that the 7th place that Stewart got was astronomically worse than where he would have finished. I think that he probably, best case scenario, gets 4th there. Maybe 3rd. Probably 5th or 6th. But ends up 7th after all is said and done. Regardless of which, after the race, he comes up to Marvin. They didn't show any of this on TV. We saw it all when we were in the press box, though. Throws his bike down, and he runs, like they're sitting by the tunnel. So the tunnel's right in front of me where it says MXB Mods. And they're kind of sitting at the edge of the tunnel, and Malcolm kind of like walks over to the berm, the backside of the berm, and points at it, and then runs back over to Marvin, and they're very animated. And our own Jason Thomas at Racer X actually, I guess, was down kind of by it. So he more or less heard what they had to say. And what he said was that Malcolm was coming up to Marvin saying, like, dude, why are you doing that at that stage of the race? Like, we could have worked together. We could have caught those guys if you didn't take us both down, which is a totally valid point. Like, yeah, they're, under the same umbrella. They're both under the KTM group, even though Malcolm rides for Husqvarna and Marvin rides for KTM Factory. It's a KTM group, so, there should be a little bit of, like, almost, teammate respect, I guess, there to a degree. Like 100% Marvin in the past has been, I feel like, probably a little bit nicer to Anderson and Osborne and guys at Husqvarna. He's only had one season to race Barcia, and I don't know, maybe they don't like each other, but it did seem a little bit aggressive, over the top for what is essentially his teammate. But like I said, I don't necessarily look at that and go like, oh my God, that was the worst takeout I've ever seen. That was ridiculous. Now that I've had a chance to like look at it again, I was like, okay, I could see why both of them mentally had one thing in mind that they were going to do, and it just didn't work out that way. Marvin thought he was going to meet Malcolm at the top. Malcolm thought he was going to cut down, square back off, or whatever. Maybe he didn't know Marvin was there. I don't know. But to me, it's just, it's Supercross. Like, there's going to be aggressive block passes like that. It's frustrating that they both went down, and it sucks because they were both moving forward. But, I mean, is the end result the worst thing ever? No, they both got pretty good top 10 finishes to start the season, and I think they can move on. And I do think that Malcolm probably owes him one back. I think Malcolm can put, Marv down early in a main or whatever at some point, but I wouldn't say that he should tee him up and send him over a berm. Just put an aggressive block pass and take his front wheel out or something. Whatever. It's Supercross. That's what happens. So, to get to my point about the Barcia Anderson thing, I think that live I was like, do you got to put him on the ground? Like, really? And then watching the replay back, I was like, oh man, that was actually not that bad at all. And Barcia in the post-race press conference, it's kind of like, I don't know why you guys are even bringing this up to make it a story. Like, it's nothing. It was just, that's Supercross, that's like an aggressive pass. And again, it's one of those things that, like, I kind of agree with him. It is Supercross. It's supposed to be kind of a contact sport. I don't love when you have a good race going on and riders end up on the ground. Personally, I would rather just see like straight up, cut unders, cut over, whatever, to make some better racing. But I also know that this is a contact sport. Like, it was way, way worse in the 90s and the 80s. I always bring this up when I talk about stuff like this. So to me, the Barcia and Anderson thing is like a wash. Like, that was just Barcia making an aggressive pass up the inside. Anderson could have swung wide and cut back underneath, but he didn't. He, elected to kind of meet Barcia at the top of the berm, and he closed the line off as much as he could, but Barcia was always kind of going to be there. Barcia just went up the inside and pushed Anderson pretty much over the berm. Like, it, you can say that he left him room, and he did, but I think Barcia knows that he's going in there with the intent of, like, I'm going to the outside line, and you can decide whether you're going to let off or not. And they both went for the same piece of real estate, and Barcia just gave a little nudge, and Anderson's front tire went over the top of the berm, and down he went. So again, personally speaking, I don't love when riders end up on the ground. I wish Anderson would have stayed up. I think that battle could have continued. I was sitting next to film guy Tom Jurnett of Team Fried in the press box for that, so it was very fun to hear his reaction to his buddy Jason Anderson being taken down. But even he, after the race, kind of got it, and then there was the whole exchange where Anderson had tweeted like, hey, hopefully your bonus check can pay for some merch, which I think he was just kind of being funny with it. And then Barcia actually did buy a Team Fried hoodie. It's just fun. You know what I mean? Like, there doesn't have to be so much of this drama and, extra fluff added to it. It's two aggressive guys. They're battling for second place in the main event. It was late. There was like 4 minutes left to go. It's fine. Like, you can make aggressive block passes, and I don't think people should vilify you. So, like I said, I do think that it sucks that both ended up on the ground. However, it's racing. There's going to be block passes where people get taken down, and, it happens. I hope that, racing-wise, it doesn't necessarily carry into the rest of the season, and we keep seeing Marvin and Malcolm take each other out, or Jason and Justin take each other out. But if it does, whatever. It's just what racing is. So maybe you guys don't agree with that. Maybe you think that both of those were over the line, or one of those was over the line, or someone sucks or the other person sucks. It's all a matter of opinion. I'm not saying you're wrong or I'm right or anything like that. It's just my opinion that both of those passes, I think, were in the end not as bad as I thought they were. Could have been worse for sure. Could have been, I don't know, injuries involved, or Malcolm could have lost a lot more spots in that situation. I will say the dumb thing about it, and the cardinal rule broken, is that you never go for a takeout or a block pass and put yourself on the ground too. So, Marvin gets an F or an L, whatever you want to call it, for that kind of sequence, putting him on the ground too. Like, if he's going to take Malcolm out, just take him out and move on. But to take yourself out too is just dumb. So, obviously not the best there, and I think he'll probably learn from that a little bit. But, as everybody has always pointed out, Marvin also took out Eli for a win. I think that's a completely different situation. You got $100,000 on the line and a championship fight still on the table. I think everybody in the world is going to try to make that pass on Tomac, but some people are such diehard Tomac fans, they probably can't see through that. Anyway, I don't necessarily think that 2 aggressive block passes, or 3, I guess, if you want to include the Cade Clayson thing in the heat race, which I think Marvin thought that was the battle for 9th at that time. I don't think it makes Marvin an awful person or a dirty rider, or he should go back to France like people say, but whatever. People have their own opinions. So let's move on from the takeout war and talk about some other fun stuff, like Ken Roczen versus Chase Sexton early in the main event. That was fun. See a couple teammates out front. It's the first race with Lars Lindstrom as the team manager of that program, so I'm sure he was probably like, man, this is so much fun. And then the second Sexton goes down, he's probably having a lot less fun. But, I was watching that whole thing unfold, and I was like, this could go one of two ways. This could be like the breakout ride Sexton has, where he gets his own teammate, pulls away, and wins A1 convincingly, and we're all going to be like, yep, that's what it's been the whole time. Or Sexton's going to go down, and Sexton went down. Like, I just didn't see a situation where Roczen was going to be the one to make the big mistake. Like, Roczen was riding within himself. He knew the pace that he could go on that track, maybe the pace that the track was limited at, and maybe Chase pushed to be on it. But, yeah, it was a good battle for a little bit. I was hoping it didn't end in tears, and it didn't really. Sexton made a little bobble. He went down. He picks it back up in third, passes Cianciarulo for second, then goes down in this whoop section 3 laps later, I think it was. And again, just a small little get off. Fortunately, he didn't get hurt from it. But, that I love that type of racing, too. Like, I love that Sexton at the opening round was mixing it up with his teammate, trying to get the lead away. Suddenly we have a situation where, is the next generation coming? Is Sexton going to pass his own teammate and win the race and all this stuff like that? But the second Sexton went down, it was Roczen's race to lose. He could easily control it from the front at that point. They already had like 6 seconds on Cianciarulo at the time, and Cianciarulo's coming off of his grade 3 AC separation, so he wasn't going to be in it for the end of the race, and he wasn't. He ended up 11th, so pretty much all the guys that were right behind him that entire race passed him at the end anyway. But, you know, Roxon had that race in the bag afterwards, and he kind of walked it home from there. So pretty much as expected from that point. I did pick Kenny to win A1, so I was pretty stoked to, you know, kind of ride that train all through last week. I picked him in my preview show video, and then, of course, he goes out and wins A1, so I feel a little vindicated with that. But I will say I'm a little bit surprised, because he did say, you know, he came in under the weather. He's been dealing with a sickness, not COVID, in the offseason. But he always comes firing out at A1. Like, he's so good at this race. It's the 4th time now that he's won A1. He's just like he's a starter. And I don't mean a starter in the fact that he gets good starts. He's a starter in that he is very strong at the beginning of seasons. He'll be probably really strong at the beginning of this season and have the red plate for 5 to 6 rounds before someone really gives him a hard challenge for it, I believe. But, you know, that's just Kenny. Like, he's always started strong in these championships, and wasn't really surprised to see it again. I was surprised to see a couple other things, though. Like, I thought, personally speaking, that Eli Tomac would be a little bit more on fire at this opening round. There's been so much positive talk about how he looks on the Star Yamaha in the offseason. And, you know, even though it was a bike change, a team change, and all that dynamic, I still thought he was going to come out a little bit more feisty. But I'll tell you what, it was a lot like watching the Eli Tomac that we've seen on Cowie over the years, where, you know, he was right behind Cooper Webb. Webb made a couple mistakes. I thought Tomac was going to get him, and then, like, we're off to the races. Like, you know, first rung of the ladder accomplished. Let's keep going through the field. But then Webb started picking it up, and it seemed like almost a little bit mentally that was like the click off for Eli Tomac, when, like, he couldn't pass Cooper Webb in the first 2 laps, and then Webb started pulling away. Tomac almost looked a little bit like, man, well, I'm kind of like lost now. Like, I got to almost regroup and catch myself here. And it was only lap 4. So, you know, I just expected maybe a little bit more. He still gets 6, which is great, you know, for a night that he wasn't maybe on his A game or what have you, to come out with a good result like that, points-wise, I think is probably a blessing. But I'm curious to see what happens in Oakland, because I feel like, you know, if he has another ride like that, then I'm going to be a little bit like, man, I don't know. Maybe this isn't going to go as well as he thought. Maybe this isn't going to go as well as everybody who's been hyping him up has thought. But we'll see. Maybe he comes around and gets a podium or wins Oakland or whatever, and we're all shut up after this week. But, you know, like, Ferrandis started in, I don't know, way the heck back there, and straight up caught and passed Eli, and was starting to run down that, you know, Mookie, Marvin, AC, Barsha group at one point. And then he goes down. Well, he didn't go down. He actually was battling with Sexton. Sexton stuffed him, and then Ferrandis stalled the bike in the whoops, and it took 5-6 riders before he got going again. So then he fell out of the top 10. But then he crashed on the same lap a little bit later. I forget where. It might have been in this set of whoops, if I remember right. And that sent him all the way back to basically the back of the pack. So, you know, he went from right in the thick of everybody and possibly going to be knocking on the door for a top 5 by the time the main event was over to, I believe he ended up 16th. So, you know, not the way that you want to start the championship off, because I know a lot of people have been hyping up Ferrandis and saying, like, you guys are all wrong. Ferrandis is, you know, going to win this championship coming off the outdoor scene. But it's the kryptonite that Ferrandis has that he can save himself in with the outdoors is he doesn't start well. Straight up, never been a good starter. So the outdoors, he can start 10th and has 35 minutes to make that time up. Supercross, he can start 10th and everybody does the same pace for 10 minutes, and it's hard to make passes. And then maybe when he gets a little bit stronger by the end of the race, perhaps fitness level wise or what have you, he's already lost like 20 seconds to the leaders because of the way the freight train works out, and he's only got 8 minutes plus a lap to try to make all that time up. So his kryptonite is 100% his starts. I think he'll get good starts at places like Glendale when the start straight is super duper long. But elsewhere, I don't know, man. Like, I think he's going to struggle with his starts a lot this year, and that's going to just kill him. Like, unless he starts starting top 5 consistently, I don't see a way that Ferrandis is just going to immediately be a title threat when he's never even won a Supercross race, even though we said the same thing for outdoors. But the outdoors, it's just different, man. It's just different. You have more time. You have more space. You can make quicker passes because there is that more space. Ferrandis is a better outdoor rider anyway. So, I don't know. My take on Ferrandis is that, like, yeah, it just needs to get better starts. For Tomac, just needs to get the ball rolling earlier in main events. Like, just needs to, like, figure out that, like, it's fine if somebody's pulling away from you, latch on, you know? Like, I think he'll figure that out as the season goes on and get a little bit more comfortable with the bike. But, you know, for the opening round, I think that's probably just a bit of a disappointment. I think he came in with a lot more steam and, you know, discussion about him and stuff like that for that to end in just a 6th. But I digress. You know, great ride for Sexton, great ride for Webb to come through and figure that whole thing out. Barcia obviously ends up on the podium. Anderson got up in 7th, but then just faded hard with the last couple of laps and ended up 10th. So it's a mixed bag. You know, Savatgy gets 8th. I think Plessinger got 9th. You got Mookie getting, you know, 7th after the crash. Marvin gets 4th. Just a mixed bag of results all over the board, and kind of sets us up for like an interesting championship dynamic because, you know, the top 3 guys that we expect, the Tomac, Webb, Roczen group, well, 2 of them went 1-2, and the other one has to, you know, maybe do a little bit going back to the drawing board this week. But if there's anybody that I think could come out and start clicking off wins consistently and get himself, you know, right into that discussion again, it's probably Eli Tomac. So, going to be fun to see. Oakland's going to be very interesting. Like I said, I'll be there. Excited to see, you know, who comes out firing there. Wouldn't be surprised at all to see Chase Sexton get his first career win just based on how good he looked at Anaheim. Wouldn't be surprised to see Webb get a win just based on how he looked at Anaheim as well. And, you know, curious to see if Roczen keeps the roll going, whether or not Tomac turns it around. Does Anderson get pissed off and come out and win a race? You know, there's still so many storylines, and I don't feel like A1 I'm necessarily, like, fully convinced that this championship is going to go one way or the other. It seems like a very open championship dynamic moving forward, and I'm excited for that. I feel like that's going to be very good for us fans, especially when there's the drama involved with it and, you know, a little bit more up in the air about, you know, what the rivalries are looking like and stuff like that. So, yeah, 450 class. Looking forward to it. 250 class, we'll touch on it fairly quickly. Obviously, the 2 biggest, you know, frowny faces of the night, really disappointed to see it kind of situations, was Nichols in the first heat and Swoll in the second heat. Now, with Swoll, from what I've heard, there hasn't been like a real official update put out yet, but I believe that fortunately, it's not fortunate that he ends up with just a concussion, because a concussion still sucks. It's not great to have one, especially as bad as it sounds like it was. But when you see him backboarded off and, you know, they're holding his neck steady and all of these things that make you really hold your breath as a fan, I was actually pleasantly surprised to hear that he's just got a bruised wrist and a bad concussion. At least that is the unofficial word so far. We'll wait to hear more as he gets more tests back. But I was very scared for Swoll. I always hate seeing guys carried off on a backboard like that. But, yeah, hopefully that's good news moving forward. Maybe he has to miss a couple races. You know, sometimes a bad concussion, you have to wait a little bit to pass protocol again, but we'll see. As for Nichols, though, 100% going to be out for a fairly lengthy amount of time. He broke both arms. I believe he has either some laceration in his hip or maybe even a chipped bone on his hip, if I remember from what I heard correctly. But, again, not an official update, just that he had surgery on both arms. It was successful. We're waiting to hear, you know, more news, but I believe he's still probably in the hospital right now would be my guess, so that's why we haven't heard anything. Just unfortunate. I mean, both of those guys, like, you think of all the work that goes into the offseason, you get basically 3.5 to 4 months to just think about that moment. Think about being back on the gate at Anaheim, getting, you know, the jitters knocked off, get ready for a championship run, and 3 laps into Colt Nichols this season, he's out with 2 broken arms, and less than a lap, half a lap into Swoll's season, he's knocked unconscious and, you know, laying there being tended to and backboarded off the track. Like, for those guys, for Husqvarna, for everybody involved, the training side of it, it's just heart-wrenching that that's all that work goes down the drain that fast. But like I said, silver lining, I guess, is that you know, they're both going to be back, it seems, and they're both going to be ready to kick some butt again at some point. Might be a little bit later, but we'll see. So yeah, definitely I felt like the life was kind of sucked out of the stadium a little bit after those 2 crashes, and, you know, we have a full restart of Swoll's heat race. We had, you know, Red Cross flags and stuff out for a while in Nichols' heat race, but it just deflated, I feel like, the stadium a little bit. But the main event was still, you know, pretty cagey. It's kind of interesting to see how it unfolded. First of all, you know, Craig does a little flinch on the inside. He was on the far inside gate. Shimoda reacts to either his flinch or some other flinch, but I don't remember seeing the gate flinch at all. So Shimoda jumps, hits the gate. Everybody to his right also jumps and starts hitting the gate or getting close, and everybody pretty much on the inside gets a bad start because of that. Vince Friese gets the hole shot, which is about as typical as it gets. He's up there with Hammaker for a little bit, but then Christian Craig just pretty much works through both of those guys in a matter of like 4 laps and took off. And Craig was perfect all day, fastest in free practice, fastest in qualifying 1 and 2 actually. Wins his heat race, wins the main event. A perfect day. You know, he was pretty much like, you know, he's emotional about the win at Houston 1 last year because of all the, you know, adversities that he'd had to face with injuries and stuff like that over the years. But Anaheim 1, you know, is like a bucket list race for him, he said, because he grew up going there. His dad, Mike Craig, obviously raced as a professional for many years, won a Supercross at one point. So, and they're from El Cajon, California, by the way, which is, you know, a suburb of San Diego. But, you know, if you live in San Diego, Anaheim 1 is not far, or just Anaheim in general. So you come to Angel Stadium, you watch a lot of races, and I'm sure, you know, that one meant a lot to him. He did say it meant a lot to him. So that was cool to see. The battle for second was feisty for a long time. Garrett Marchbanks slowly was catching Hammaker. They didn't get too much of that, I feel like, on the broadcast, but Marchbanks was just working there, and then he'd make a mistake and lose a second, and then work back up to Hammaker and make a mistake and lose a couple more seconds, and then it was just like a rotation. It just kept happening lap after lap, and I was like, man, is he going to actually make this pass? Is Hammaker going to hold on for second? And then it all became like a moot point because Hunter Lawrence came from way back there. He was so far back off the start. He was not actually one of the riders that hit the gate, but he was one that like had probably the worst reaction to all the people hitting the gate. Definitely was like almost last through the first corner. Ended up, I think, on the first lap, he was like 14th or something like that. It was pretty far back. And got all the way up to Marchbanks, made a pass on Marchbanks with half a lap to go, and got up to Hammaker for second. And as he put it, he went down the inside in the last corner and pretty much decided, like, that's probably a little bit too greasy for the first race of the season to make that aggressive of a block pass. So kind of almost backed out of the challenge mid T-bone, I guess, with Hammaker. But Hammaker was, you know, probably breathing heavy at that point, and, you know, the adrenaline's going through the roof. So they clipped, and then Hammaker, trying to double single, actually OJ'd the double, plows into the face of the triple landing before the finish line jump, and then just barely rolls over the finish line jump, still in second place ahead of Lawrence. And then they didn't show this on TV either, but Hammaker pulled off the side of the track, like right by the whoops, and didn't even go to the podium. Like, he just stopped, hunched over on his bike, and for, I don't know, the better part of 2.5 to 3 minutes was just sitting there catching his breath. And he said it was because he hit his chest on the bars so hard from OJing the double into the triple face that he knocked the wind like clean out of him. So kudos to him to save that with all that chaos going on at the finish line and still get second on the night. He flew so far under the radar coming into the season, so it was great to see him like kind of prove that he still has like that race winning speed that we saw him have in the West Championship last year. Looked good, I thought, you know, pretty much all throughout the day. He was comfortable, didn't seem to have too many big moments aside from right there at the end of the race. So you know, big boost of confidence, I feel like, for him, because now he's going to be like, yeah, everything that I did last year is just, that's validated now against, you know, maybe a little bit more of a stacked field, if that's what you want to call it. Comes out, gets right on the podium, second place at the opening round. I think he probably believes he's a title contender, and, you know, right now there isn't anything to say that he shouldn't be. You know, with Nichols out, Swole probably hurt for a little while. There's a couple guys that are going to, you know, not be kind of in the mix, so we're starting to look down at, you know, this Craig, Lawrence, Hammaker, Marchbanks, Moseman, Shimoda group, more or less, I think, to be the title contenders. And yes, I left Vince Friese out. I know that the Moto Concepts team is probably livid at that, but I don't know, man. It's just so tough to say that Friese can hold shot and be up front a bunch, and a bunch of guys went down, and, you know, riders missed the main event and stuff like that, and to only get fifth out of that, you know what I mean? Like, if he got on the podium, I'd be like, okay, you know, maybe Friese is going to have enough in him to win a race this year. Maybe he could be in the mix to battle for the championship, but I don't know. To get fifth with everything else going on, I think he probably should have done a little bit better than that. I digress, though. Like I said, I think it's down to kind of the group I'm talking about, and I think there's going to be multiple winners from this group, but golly, is it tough to bet against Christian Craig right now. He just looks so dang good all day long. You know, fastest qualifier, like I said, wins his heat race, wins the main event. Perfect day. Is there anybody that can stop him? I mean, maybe himself, because that's kind of how it's been in the past, but now without his teammate out there, I feel like he's maybe going to feel a little bit more like the alpha for this championship, especially with how good the opening round went for him. So we'll see. We will see, but personally speaking, I'm going to go Sexton Craig this weekend in Oakland. I think Sexton's going to, get a good start and kind of, feel the flow that he had last weekend carry into this weekend. He probably should have won round 2 last year had he not crashed while leading. So I think he wins round 2 this year and picks up his first ever 450 main event victory. And then I think Craig repeats. I think he just, right now there's just too much going good for him. I think unless Lawrence starts either with him or in front of him, I don't know if I could put anybody speed-wise. Maybe Moseman to be right there as well. But I think Craig's going to outstart those guys. I think he's better starters than them. Starts a little bit longer this week as well, so that Star Yamaha power is going to help with that going into the first corner. So I got Craig, I got Sexton. Love to know what you guys think, though, as well. What you guys think about my thoughts and opinions on the race, what you guys think about who's going to win in Oakland this weekend, whether or not you're going, etc. Get down in the comment section below. Be sure to bench race with me. I'll be down there as well, chatting with you guys. But that's it for the recap of the Anaheim 1 Supercross IRL playing MX bikes. And hey, look I actually by the end of this is starting to put in some fairly consistent laps. Pretty much about a crash per lap, which is typical to my simulation game skills at this point. But, we're coming around. We're getting there. And hopefully maybe doing some MX bikes races later on in the year when I start getting a little bit better at it as well. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. As always, get down in the comment section below. Like it if you guys really enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And look forward to seeing you guys in all of our future videos on the channel. But I'm signing off for now. And I'll see you guys in the next one. So long for now.